Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to explore something pretty fascinating today, how our ideas about, well, creativity, technology, art, even society, how they've all evolved over time. Yeah, today we're unpacking a really unique set of notes. Observations, reflections, all collected over several years, but all focused on one specific date, July 3rd. It gives us this kind of snapshot, changing views on music, art, technology's impact. It's quite a lens.
It really is. And what's compelling is how these personal notes work almost like cultural timestamps.
Yeah.
They let us connect the dots, right,
Yeah.
between past trends and the sort of dilemmas we're facing now. It makes you think not just what's happening, but why it matters, for how we create and understand things today.
That's a great way to put it. So our mission here is to dig into these notes, pull out those surprising bits of insight from music production details all the way to AI's big picture implications, and really just think about what it means for human expression, our collective future. Okay, let's start with music. Let's rewind to July 3rd, 1999. Picture this. Listening to tracks from 67, Zawinul's Mercy, 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 the live one.
Oh, yeah, great track.
And Hendrix, Foxy Lady, of course. The notes from back then, they zero in on a couple of things, like wondering if the crowd noise on the Zawinul track was, coached, a bit like a laugh track, or if it was real.
Huh. That's an interesting thought. Spontaneous versus manufactured atmosphere.
Exactly. And with Hendrix, the observation was about the, quote, dirty mics and that really hard-panned vocal all the way in one speaker.
Very 60s sound, yeah.
It even sparked this idea then, what if you added live audience sounds now? Not just as an effect, but to give recorded music more context, a richer setting. And this also made the writer think about the dances, the monkey, the swim, very specific to that era. And those plummy bass lines, usually played with a pick back then.
Right, which is a neat contrast to James Jamerson's influence later on. He got everyone playing bass with their fingers, changed the whole feel.
Totally shifted it.
And this connects to that bigger point about nostalgia you mentioned. In, say, 1979, cool was pretty much whatever was new, current. But jump to 1999, and a 20-year-old, someone born in 1980, could listen to a song from 67 and think that's cool.
Right. Which wouldn't have happened in 79 with a song from, 1946?
Exactly. It just wasn't the vibe. So it suggests a shift, maybe away from constant invention towards, recycling, reinterpreting older stuff.
So, okay, is that driven by technology? This shift?
No.
Or is it more of a natural cycle we go through?
And an observation from July 3rd, 2025 seems relevant here. It talks about innovation itself reshaping music fundamentally. Think about equal temperament tuning 400 years ago. Standardizing notes, that was huge.
Yeah, allowed instruments to play together in any key, led to the harpsichord, the piano.
Precisely. New tools for expression. Then came recording technology, another massive shift, right? Suddenly you have infinite copies, not just live performance or sheet music. And the 2025 note suggests now, we're moving beyond even needing to write or record sometimes. We can just manipulate existing copies or generate new things from them.
That changes everything, originality, creation.
That fundamentally redefines it.
That ambient jukebox idea mentioned is interesting too, like the Flaming Lips doing it live with audience participation.
A shared creation.
But you could also imagine AI creating these endlessly varied sound environments, adaptive soundscapes. Okay, moving forward a bit, July 3rd, 2008. There's a mention of seeing that photo, graffiti on a closed tower record saying death of music.
Oof, yeah, bleak times for the industry then.
Very bleak. But then here's a twist from a 2025 reflection. It pushes back on that idea. It argues music won't completely devolve because it's, and I quote, too joined at the hip with language, especially now with language models. You can use descriptive prompts to generate sounds, right? Language feeding music directly.
That prompts a thought about how electronic music gets, orchestrated, how it's put together. The notes compare it to figuring out old sitcom floor plans, but for sound, trying to map out the structure.
Right.
And you see ensembles like Alarm Will Sound doing similar things, translating electronic pieces like Aphex Twin's Blue Calyx for acoustic instruments.
Trying to find the reality behind the artifice.
Exactly. And the notes mention a jarring metronomic pattern in their arrangement of Blue Calyx. It suggested that might have been kept in almost like a guide, like grid lines a painter leaves faintly visible, a trace of the structure.
Huh. And the 2025 note says, transcribing and arranging AI music, like this example, Vintage of the Vinyl for string quartet, is basically the same kind of exercise today.
Yeah, understanding and reinterpreting the structure, whether human or machine-made.
Then looking ahead to July 3rd, 2024, there's this provocative idea. If AI gets really good at writing music, could you just take its ideas, claim them? Fits with that old saying, great composers steal.
Right. The ethics get blurry fast.
And the 2025 thought goes even further. Imagine creating totally fake artists, fake bands,
Generated personas.
and then down the line maybe even having tribute bands for those fictional bands in movies.
Wow, meta. But the acceleration is key here. The notes suggest AI bands could be mainstream really soon. The progress, the upslopes on AI tech, they're measured in months now, not years.
So fast.
Maybe a quick troughing follows the hype dies down fast rather than a long decline. But the note warns, people need to be careful. Don't just, drink the Kool-Aid about the quality.
Yeah, which brings us to that quote from Harvey Mason Jr., a really crucial point. He says, at the end of the day, we have to make stuff that the computer can't make.
That hits the nail on the head.
And he's not just talking about individual songs like canoes, he calls them, standalone things. He argues music needs to be conceptual now. Level 3 thinking. You need your own signature river system.
Oh, artistic world, yeah. Interconnected, unique.
Something AI, at least right now, just can't replicate. That deep, personal, conceptual framework.
And this ties into the whole problem of artistic control with AI, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Often you can't quite control the parameters tightly enough, so you end up just sort of wading through what the AI spits out rather than truly directing it.
Less creation, more curation.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Compare that to the satisfaction when your human input is absolutely essential, like Debbie Harry's process mentioned in the notes, using rhythms from words and phrases, word drums, he called it. Really specific personal input shaping the output.
Right. And the notes also mention this hesitation about jumping onto every new AI music app.
Yeah.
Why is that? Feels a bit like playing along to, I don't know, preset drum tracks or loops sometimes. Lacks that organic feel.
Canned creativity.
Plus the risk of a network stampede. If an app gets too popular, it crashes. Like the example of a Mozart AI app not loading. Too much demand breaks the magic.
Where the infrastructure can't keep up with the hype sometimes.
And just a quick final thought from 2024 on music.
Yeah.
This paradox about jazz at outdoor concerts, chosen because it's supposedly less annoying than other genres, but then smooth jazz ends up being annoying because it's been stripped of its edge, sanitized of its, quote, bold eccentricity.
Yeah, the attempt to make it inoffensive makes it bland. Authenticity gets lost.
Exactly. Which is a perfect segue, actually. Authenticity, perception. Let's unpack the next theme. How we see art and how technology is changing vision and, well, authenticity itself. Okay, so July 3rd, 2017, an observation about photo sharing groups online. The note suggests photography was shifting, becoming less of a rigorous art, more like an exercise in feeding images to a network to get likes.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see that. Performance over substance.
And the argument is this corrupts vision. You start taking photos for the group, for the algorithm, not from your own artistic impulse.
That definitely raises questions about context then. The notes mention preferring museums, galleries, places where maybe older photos like daguerreotypes might seem kind of nondescript, even boring on Instagram.
Right. Out of context.
But in a gallery without screens everywhere, well, maybe phones or info kiosks, you appreciate them differently in their historical setting.
Physical presence matters. The note mentions VR galleries as a possibility, but adds the caveat. You still need the headset. Still a barrier.
True. It's not quite the same as being there.
Okay, here's a really fascinating bit from July 3rd, 2018, looking at how neural networks see. The idea is maybe this gives us clues about how other organisms might see.
Oh, so.
Well, machines without metadata tend to see angles, raw geometric data, basically.
Okay. Patterns.
But humans, we see metaphors, things that look like other things. And that recognition, that connection, it seems to happen primarily in language.
So language shapes our visual understanding.
That's the idea. Like how migratory birds use magnetic fields to see their way.
A sense we don't have.
Right. The notes propose that, in a way, language is our navigational device, how we map reality, grasp abstractions, make sense of art and experience.
Wow. Okay, that's a deep thought. Language is a sense organ almost. And how does this connect to AI art now in 2024?
Well, the note describes AI art generation as a kind of art tourism. You're exploring possibilities via your phone, which is also your social body online.
Right, the interface to the collective.
And while AI art definitely has this collective magnetism, it draws people in. The note says the heart is missing, that core of human intention or experience.
Yeah. That resonates. And it draws a parallel to the 1930s, the Great Depression era. You had this idea of the efficient new man, almost machine-like.
Right, associated with certain political movements, too.
Exactly. But artists then were often fascinated by biology, by biomorphic forms, organic shapes. It offered a different kind of new vision, an alternative to the visions pushed by fascists and dictators, a more human-centered one.
So art providing alternative ways of seeing alternative futures, even then.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've talked music, visual art, perception. What about value and where society might be heading? This collection of thoughts touches on that too. Let's maybe define some terms first, based on the notes. The difference between timeless and vintage.
Okay, important distinction.
Timeless seems to mean universal acceptance. Things raised to the highest level of human achievement over centuries, millennia even. Think classical sculptures, enduring literature.
Got it. The long arc.
Vintage, though, is described as hierarchically lower, shorter duration. Think maybe fashion from a few decades ago, certain design trends.
More tied to a specific period, less universally acclaimed forever.
Right. And then there are movements, data, pop art, etc. They're also shorter term, but maybe distinct from vintage.
How so?
Perhaps because they're seen as fine art rather than just contemporary design. Museums often handle this by putting them in different galleries, right? Fine art versus decorative arts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Art Deco is a great example here, which the notes bring up. Like an Art Deco dress from a thrift store. You'd probably call that vintage.
Yeah, probably.
But Art Deco furniture or architecture, that's often seen as museum quality, high art or design.
So the same period, but the context and the medium change its perceived value. Even with buildings, we might call them vintage architecturally, but we recognize their status as elevated.
Exactly, it's slippery. Depends how it's used, viewed, classified.
There's also a quick practical thought in here about the creative process itself, about happy accidents.
Yes, the unexpected discoveries.
The downside noted is even if you capture a happy accident, record it, photograph it, whatever, you still have to do something with it. You have to act on it.
Right, it doesn't just magically become a finished piece.
And that need to then consciously work with it can make the accident feel, well, less happy, more like just another starting point.
Takes the spontaneity out of it a bit. Yeah. Okay, so shifting to broader societal trends now. There's a note from July 3rd, 2015. It predicted a partitioned internet. An internet.
And that seems to be happening now, right? With age verification, different walled gardens?
Absolutely. And the note views this as a potential slippery slope. It starts with maybe protecting children online, which sounds reasonable.
Sure.
But it could morph into a kind of digital checkpoint, Charlie, where adults also face increasing checks and controls. All kinds of other things get looped in, the note says.
So incremental restrictions.
Yeah. Thousands of tiny cuts to authoritarianism is the phrase used, leading down a path where, the note speculates, maybe the U.S. could eventually resemble another China with another name, with provinces instead of states, constant surveillance, endless wars.
That's quite a prediction from 2015. A stark warning. And related to that, a reflection on political labels from July 3rd, 2023. The author originally thought, okay, America wouldn't become fascist in the traditional sense, but maybe something like toxic metastasized libertarianism.
An interesting distinction, kind of a homegrown authoritarianism.
Something like that. But the author's 2025 update on that thought is brutally honest. Just says, I have eaten these words for breakfast.
Wow, so a complete reassessment based on events, acknowledging they might have underestimated the direction things were taking.
Seems that way. It's a powerful admission of changing perspective.
And one final distinction from the notes, quite simple but profound. The difference between fiction and deceit.
Okay.
The point being that deceit, in art at least, isn't inherently bad. Artists have used illusion, misdirection, forms of deceit for millennia. Think trompe-l'oeil painting, fooling the eye.
Right. It's about intent and context, not just the act of misrepresentation itself. Fiction aims to reveal truth through invention. Deceit might have other motives.
Precisely. A useful distinction to keep in mind, especially now.
So, quite a journey we've taken. Through music evolving, how we see art changing with tech, shifting ideas about value, and even societal directions.
It really is fascinating how these snapshots, all from July 3rd across the years, really map out the evolution of, well, paradigms. In art, tech, how we understand things. It definitely feels like while the tools are changing incredibly fast, that basic human drive to create, to connect, to make sense of it all, that seems constant.
Absolutely. So wrapping this up, maybe the question for you, listening, is this. With technology moving so quickly, with art and truth feeling constantly redefined, how do you cultivate your own signature river system, your own way of understanding and expressing yourself, especially in a world that feels increasingly shaped by algorithms and someone else's curated feed? What does it really mean for you to make stuff the computer can't make in your own life, in your own way?